Hello, and welcome back to Playing Through My Sega Genesis Collection number 3, QuackShot. Released in 1991 for the Sega Genesis, QuackShot is a side-scrolling platformer set in the Disney universe and starring Donald Duck. The game takes inspiration from adventure exploration, such as Indiana Jones, and has Donald, along with his 3 nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, hunting for treasure. A sneak preview before the game opens with Donald venturing through a dark and creepy cave. He sneaks towards a pile of treasure, but right before he can reach it, he falls into a hole in the floor. This shows the type of luck Donald and his nephews have been having looking for treasure. The game begins with Donald looking through some old books in his Uncle Scrooge's study. He stumbles across King Garuzia's great duck treasure. The book tells how the king hid his most prized possession prior to his death. Donald also finds within the pages a map containing clues to the treasure's whereabouts. Donald is overjoyed, but didn't realize he was being spied on by one of Pete's henchmen. As Donald heads home with the map, he is chased down by Pete's gang, but is luckily able to escape. Back home, Donald gathers Huey, Dewey, and Louie into the plane as they prepare to take off. As they are about to leave, Daisy arrives, angry that Donald is late for their date. He covers by saying he has something important that has come up, and he has a surprise for her when he returns. Donald leaves an angry Daisy behind, but is immediately followed by Pete's gang in their own plane. From here, the gameplay begins and the player is presented with a map of 3 possible locations to travel to: Duckburg, Mexico, and Transylvania. While you can select any location to start with, certain levels unlock new abilities and items that can be used in other levels. For strategic purposes, we will start with Mexico. Donald traverses the desert terrain, avoiding birds that drop beehives on his head, as well as Pete's gang. Donald is equipped to defend himself with a yellow plunger gun that, when hitting an enemy, will temporarily stun them, allowing Donald to pass unharmed. Hitting enemies will sometimes drop food items that can be collected for additional health, or money, which are for in-game points. Donald can also find corn, which can be swapped as a weapon if enough is collected, to fire corn projectiles at enemies. This is limited, but more powerful compared to the plunger. Donald has a power bar, which is his health level. Getting hit will deplete some, and when it is empty, you lose a life. Falling to your death uses an entire life. Once the lives hit 0, it's game over. Fortunately, the game allows you to continue the adventure with unlimited continues from the level you were last on. At the end of the level, Donald encounters ancient ruins, but the path forward is blocked without a key. Donald must find the hero's key to proceed. With nowhere left to go, Donald calls the plane and chooses a new location. Next, we will travel to Duckburg. Here, Donald traverses the city as usual, getting past Pete's gang, but here, a new item is introduced. Donald can collect hot peppers, and if he finds enough, can go into a spice-induced rage, which renders him temporarily invincible and takes out all enemies. At the end of the stage, Donald interacts with a fellow explorer who just so happens to have the hero's key and gives it to him. The level order here matters, because if you start with Duckburg before going to Mexico, Donald won't know he needs the key and won't ask about it. If you start here and then go to Mexico, you can always go back and ask about the key. With the hero's key in hand, Donald flies back to Mexico and opens the ancient ruins. Inside the dark temple, fire flies through the air. Donald must sneak and carefully platform his way to the end, where he surprisingly finds Goofy. Goofy somehow was inside, just looking around, even though the door couldn't be opened without the key, so I'm not sure how he got in. Anyway, he hands Donald a note he found. He also gives Donald a new red plunger, which can be used to stick to the side of walls. This allows Donald to reach previously unreachable areas. With this, Donald leaves the ruins and returns to the plane. He now heads back to Duckburg, where he utilizes the new plunger to reach above the wall at the end of the level. Here, he fights his way through until reaching electrical wires. He can ride and jump on the wires to reach the end of the level. Here he encounters Gyro Gearloose, who wants Donald to try out his newest invention. This turns out to be bubblegum ammo, which can be used in very unique ways. After this, he heads back to the plane and off to the next location. The last available location is Transylvania. Donald makes his way through the dark and creepy terrain, avoiding bats and other deadly obstacles. At the end, he reaches Dracula's castle. Inside, he reaches a seemingly impassable wall. A ghost informs Donald that Dracula himself has the map to King Garuzia's treasure. The new bubblegum ammo is just what he needs. He uses it to remove specially colored bricks from the wall and moves deeper into the castle. Donald moves through the maze-like castle, avoiding ghosts, traveling underwater, and avoiding getting crushed, until finally arriving in Dracula's chamber. Here, he battles Dracula and his bat minions until he defeats him and takes the treasure map. With the real treasure map now in his possession, Donald can travel to 4 new locations: Egypt, Maharaja, a Viking ship, or the South Pole. Strategically, we will start with Maharaja. As usual, Donald fights his way through to the end. Where inside a palace, he is offered a challenge. If he can defeat the tiger in the garden, he will receive the Sphinx tear as a reward. Donald accepts and looks for the tiger. However, it is not a straightforward journey. Donald must make his way past many enemies and numbered doors to reach the tiger. It is a giant maze, and selecting the wrong door will set you back. After picking the right options, Donald confronts and battles the fire-breathing tiger. After many plunger shots, the tiger is defeated, and Donald is rewarded with the Sphinx Tear. The next stop on the journey is Egypt. Donald makes his way through the desert, careful not to fall victim to the quicksand or many enemies. At the end, he finds an ancient tomb, but the door is sealed. Luckily, the Sphinx Tear is just the tool needed to open the door. Inside, Donald must platform his way through a similar, yet much deadlier version of the ruins in Mexico. After narrowly avoiding the many pitfalls and traps, Donald acquires the Scepter of Ra and heads out for the South Pole. South Pole presents a unique challenge, as the ground is slick and icy. Donald must be careful not to slide to his death and avoid the frozen water. At the end of the level, he discovers a key, but it is stuck in the ice. Fortunately, the Scepter of Ra melts it free. Donald now travels to the Viking ship. On board, he must avoid enemy arrows and bombs. At the end of the level, he encounters a lone Viking, who requests Donald's help in ridding the ship of the ghosts inside. At the end, Donald battles a ghost boss that looks like a Viking suit of armor. After defeating it, he returns to the Viking above. The Viking gives him a new green plunger in hopes that it will help him find the diary. This new plunger can stick to the body of enemies. Donald takes the new plunger and heads back to the South Pole. Here, he sticks it to the belly of a bird and grabs it to fly off into the distance. This takes him far off, where Donald travels beneath the icy water. Eventually, he finds the Viking diary hidden in the walls. He returns to the surface, but discovers something terrible. Pete has kidnapped Huey, Dewey, and Louie and threatens Donald to give him the treasure and diary. Left with no other choice, Donald obliges and hands the items over to Pete. Enraged, the four are determined to follow Pete to his hideout and get the items back. Donald reaches the hideout and platforms through the most dangerous and intense area yet. Death is around every corner and misstep. Carefully, Donald eventually reaches and confronts Pete. They battle for possession of the map and diary. Pete operates machinery that he uses to try and crush Donald, while his gang attacks from the sides. Donald must get up high enough to hit Pete in the face to defeat him. The popcorn gun is useful in this fight, or any boss fight for that matter. After enough hits, Pete throws up the white flag, and Donald gets back the map and diary. Within the pages of the diary, Donald discovers that the map must be dipped in water to reveal the treasure's true location. He does so and locates the Great Duck Treasure Island. Of course, this new area is not without its dangers. Duck Island really ramped up the difficulty of the platforming, but with repetition, these sections could be mastered and were my favorite part of the game. Donald must earn his way through, taking leaps of faith on disappearing platforms until reaching the final boss of the game. This sword-wielding duck throws his blade at Donald and even rattles the ceiling, sending large debris straight for Donald's head. The final boss was easily the hardest boss of the game, as the debris falling and sword throwing left you open to major damage from many different angles. However, after many game overs, the patterns and openings to attack became more recognizable. After a while, he is defeated, and Donald unlocks the treasure chamber. Much to his dismay, the treasure within is nothing more than a stone statue of a princess. Donald and his nephews return to Daisy, who eagerly awaits her surprise. They bring in the statue, but she isn't pleased. Huey, Dewey, and Louie trip while moving the statue, and it breaks on the floor. As it does, a beautiful necklace is found within, which Daisy is much more receptive to. Donald flies in joy, and the game ends. As with most Disney games released on the Genesis, this is a great game from start to finish. It is one of my all-time favorite Genesis games, and still holds up today, with beautiful graphics and crisp gameplay. It has great platforming with many unique encounters, so it never feels repetitive. The exploration allows you to choose your own path and discover the game's secrets and how to progress the game. Unlike many Genesis games, QuackShot does not have level select or cheat codes. However, there are ways to get unlimited popcorn ammo or lives. You simply need to find a location where the item is available, collect it, leave the area, and return to collect it as many times as needed. I highly recommend this game to anyone who is a fan of 2D platformers or the Genesis games on Sega. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time for playing through my Sega Genesis collection, number 4.